$15 billion of subsidies for animal ag. And then it was like, I don't know, like 50 million for like all plant-based foods. It was just an unreasonable difference there. And so if we could take away lobbying and like subsidies like that, then that would, I think, change like the education system in schools, and they would stop saying that the only way you can get protein is meat and the only way you can get calcium is milk and all that utter BS.
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
And I am so excited today to have my good friend Zack Belknap on the call today. Actually, Zack, I think I've known you probably 2 or 3 years from Genuine Fitness when I was actually training there, and you are a trainer there. Things have changed dramatically since we first met. You are a pro bodybuilder. You've been vegan, plant-based for quite some time now, and I definitely want to talk about that. So with that, welcome to the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Well, give some background on yourself about how you got into eating plant-based and vegan, what that means to you, and let's just go from there.
For sure. Yeah. I've always kind of been into sports, and then like around high school, I started to get into just lifting in the gym, and I kind of left the sports world and started getting into like bodybuilding, kind of in a really like relaxed, not very serious way, but I was like passionate about it, just not very knowledgeable about it. So anyway, like fast forward several years, I had moved here to Oregon, and I became friends with a guy at the gym that was like really big, and started working out with him, and he was vegan, and he was like always kind of like gently nudging me to try it out. And I kind of was like the typical bro at the time that was like, no way, dude, like I'll lose all my gains if I do that, even though he was way bigger than I was. And finally, I think he like told me to watch Cowspiracy or something. And that was like the final push. Like I saw that and was like, how can I continue calling myself an environmentalist when I know the impact of this industry? I can't keep supporting that. And that kind of started off my whole journey.
Wow. So you actually started more of an environmentalist than a vegan, and that led into veganism. And it's interesting because we're going to post some pictures on the blog post with this interview of your before and after. And I've seen some of your before, and you were kind of a skinny dude, and you were athletic, but you were nowhere near what you are today. How did you come to the place that now you're a pro bodybuilder, and you did it on plants? So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So during that time, I was working at a different gym, not Genuine Fitness, and so I started my plant-based journey. And then about a year later, I started working at Genuine Fitness, always with like kind of lightly entertaining the idea of doing a bodybuilding show, but never like committing to a time or anything like that. And then the owner, Aaron, who you know, he is also a professional bodybuilder, and he's extremely passionate about it. And he kind of just decided for me one day, like, you know what, you're in prep, like we're doing a show. It's going to be in, I don't know, it was like 6 months down the road or something like that. I was like, okay, let's do this. And just started, at that point I had been vegan for, I don't know, close to 2 years. And ended up winning that first show, and several others after that. And then the following year, like exactly 1 year later, I went to that same show, like the first one that I did, and won my pro card at it. So it was really cool that kind of after that first season, I was like, maybe I'm actually like could be good at this, and I could really use it as like my tool for advocacy, because that's the best way to kind of like, I don't know, shut people up about it. Everything that you think is going to happen is not what happens.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that, because the number one question that all of us get when people find out that we're vegan and plant-based is, where do you get your protein? So address that for people on their level of concern over, oh my gosh, I'm not eating animal products. So where do they get their protein?
For sure, yeah. Like pretty much every single thing that grows in the ground has protein in it. And I just focus my like main protein sources, especially when I'm like dieting for a show, will be tofu, tempeh, and homemade seitan. So that kind of like, I think especially seitan, but tofu and tempeh too, are like a gray area in terms of being whole food plant-based. I think a lot of people will side on one direction or the other, whether they are or not. But everything else is just like grains and starches and vegetables. But I try to make sure that outside of my actual protein sources that I listed, I pick vegetables that are high in protein, especially the cruciferous ones like broccoli and Brussels sprouts. And then things like buckwheat too. So my carbs and my vegetable also are like adding protein to meals. But,
well, and I'm kind of curious because when you're going through the training for a competition, but then you have to get rid of the body fat and all that. What's your process for that? You've bulked up and now you've got to strip down. So how does a plant-based eater actually do something like that?
most of the time, whether I'm bulking or cutting, I'm generally a pretty like low fat dieter. So it's just like moderate protein and really high carbs. And then when it comes time to start dieting for a show, I'll just reduce the carbs a bit. So Aaron is my coach and he'll set my macronutrients for me. And I just follow that and just make sure to fit in my foods to those macronutrient counts. But it pretty much is usually just a simple reduction in carbohydrates. And I just repeat all the way through.
Well, obviously your repeat works because you look great. I'm again, we're going to put pictures up of your competition images, and I mean, just phenomenal what you've been able to do, which actually leads into the next question about what you do in your business. You're a trainer. How many of the people that you've been training actually as a result of just you imparting your wisdom on how to lift and just the exercise side, but they also look at the nutrient side and they go to a plant-based eating protocol? Does that happen very often?
Yeah, I wouldn't say super often because I try not to push it because I don't want to push away clients, even though it's like always there in the back of my mind. Like I'm trying to slowly kind of impart my knowledge and the things that I've learned as a health professional and say, like maybe these products aren't the best, especially if you're trying to like get away from a certain disease or, avoid heart disease or whatever. But I definitely like share little pieces of knowledge here and there. And I've had definitely a handful of clients, like anywhere from like 5 to 10 that will either make the switch or at least just like ask for advice on how to start making the switch. But it's been cool. Like a couple of people that I never expected will just kind of like tell me, hey, I've been plant-based for like a week or 2 weeks now. I'm like, no way. Like that's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
It's amazing what we think is great news nowadays. It's like, oh, you're plant-based. That is so awesome. Well, it's interesting because when I used to train at Genuine and I heard that you were plant-based and I was like, no way. And I've been nearly 2 years as a plant-based eater and it's like, I just started noticing things differently once I made the decision to go plant-based, the number of people that actually are, and that you really represent what it means to be plant-based in such a great way, such, a healthy way. Let's talk about, first of all, the changes that have occurred because of the COVID-19 situation. How has that impacted your business? And are you doing anything remotely to train people? What's the deal with that?
Yeah, so I've done a little bit remotely, but it is definitely challenging. Most people don't have access to equipment, and I don't know, I can send people workouts and stuff like that, but the, keeping people on track, a lot different if you don't have like, a meeting where you have to go somewhere and like meet with someone that you said you were going to meet with. So I think that's challenging for some of my clients. So I do some remote programming here and there, but not very much. That's been difficult.
Well, let's say that somebody wants to get, and I definitely want to talk about your activism and your advocacy for animal rights and the compassion to animals. But I really want to drill down on the whole issue of health. And actually, by the time this episode is going to air, I'll be 66. I hit 66 in a couple of days. And I got to tell you, as a woman at the age I am eating plant-based, it gives me a vibrancy that I never even imagined I would have. I went on a 4-mile run this morning, really miss going to the gym. I have to tell you, I do miss that aspect. But let's say that somebody is sitting on the fence with their health around exercise and eating. What are some insights that you can give them that would encourage them to at least try for maybe 30 days some type of an exercise protocol and a healthy eating protocol?
Well, I would definitely prioritize eating first, because that is by far the most important. And then exercise base is really, that's more like what are you going to stick to? What are you passionate about? If you enjoy running or rock climbing, then do that, and just start nice and easy, kind of ease yourself into it, but find things that you enjoy and that you'll stick with. I don't know, advice for eating. If you're struggling with your health, like usually the culprit is inflammation. That's like the basis for all of disease. And so if you're able to eat in a way that reduces inflammation, then you're going to help all of your health ailments. And so anyway, that's kind of the biggest benefit of a whole food plant-based diet, is that it dramatically reduces all your inflammation, especially if you want to look into the science. It's usually they're looking at the C-reactive protein markers, and those are like way down just because of a reduction in oxidative stress from eating animal products. So.
Well, you know, actually it was because of inflammation that I finally decided to give plant-based eating a try. I was going to try it for 7 days, see if it really worked as well as everything I read. And in 2 days, the inflammation was gone. I started dropping weight. I started getting more energy. It was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I used to get daily headaches. I don't get headaches anymore. I mean, the benefits so far outweigh the downside. And there's really no downside if you look at the macro view of what it means to be a vegan and plant-based eater, which really leads into your advocacy and your activism, because I know that you have a pretty strong position about not eating animals. And I know that you've got trolls. We were talking about that. The people that, you know, you'll post something about veganism and all of a sudden you have somebody saying, oh, I'm going to go eat a dog. And it's like, oh, give me a break. And you handle it so well, I have to say. So how did you get so passionate about the animals?
Yeah, the craziest thing is, like, as I said before, I started this journey because of for the environment, and still, like, the whole time I was an omnivore, I was one of those people that I love animals, but I was I was really into eating meat, and I was also like a hunter and a fisherman. And then when I started this, the longer I went without eating meat, the more compassionate I felt towards animals. It's seriously opened up this part of my heart and my mind that I didn't really know existed. And that's when I really made the connection, that it didn't really make sense, and kind of broke down the dissonance there. And that kind of continues to this day. The longer that I'm vegan, the more and more I really feel for the animals. And so I wanted to, I realized that for every single reason, veganism is the right answer, whether it's for the environment or for the animals or for your health. And so I just wanted to share that knowledge with people. And not everyone really can relate to the animal rights thing, because a lot of people do feel like they love animals and don't really think that eating them is wrong. Or so that's why I try to really focus on health, because everyone can appreciate the benefits of health.
And I think that, for myself, I was about 6 months into being completely plant-based, and I was in the grocery store and walking by the meat department, and I actually had a visceral response. I felt it was just incredible what happened. It was like all this emotion filled me around the pain and the suffering, and I thought I could never, ever eat meat again. And recently I was around somebody who was having a tri-tip, and I looked at that and I wanted to throw up looking at that, because I thought I could feel that pain coming. And a lot of people don't really understand that. They haven't gotten to that point of being able able to really take in energetically what these animals go through. And have you had that experience where you can really feel the pain of the animals and, you know, like that whole process? I tell people, go all the way back to when that animal was conceived, and then the whole process they go through to get on your plate. And if you can still eat meat with that, then God bless you. So what's been your experience with that, with just feeling what the animals are going through?
There's, I guess, been a couple experiences. Like one, I was really, really young, and my father and I had just shot like a squirrel that we were gonna eat, and I remember him like dressing the squirrel, like skinning it, and just being like, "This is unreal!" Like, and that night I couldn't eat it. That was kind of my first experience with that, and then I kind of was just desensitized over time to those kinds of things. And I remember revisiting that memory after becoming vegan, and that it was like earth shattering. Like, it crushed me. And kind of realizing that everyone has that kind of innate compassion for animals, and we have to kind of get over it when we see them being hurt and shut it down. And so breaking down those walls, definitely, I kind of see it everywhere now, especially like from the work that activism or the activists are doing with like footage on farms and stuff like that. It's always, it's in the eyes, you know, you can like feel their pain in their eyes. And then I guess, yeah, that's kind of it. I had to like kind of stop exposing myself to that kind of stuff. I had to watch the film Dominion, and I made it about halfway through, and I couldn't. It's like, I'm already vegan. I can't be.
Right. Yeah, I think we know what goes on. And now, you know, I think it's our responsibility. Once you have become aware of something, you can't shut down to it. And I really believe that those of us who are willing to take that journey into the areas of raising awareness. And you know, it's not about shoving it down people's throats. It's not about forcing people to believe a certain way, but it's raising the awareness so that they can make a more educated choice, which actually leads into the next area I would love to have some conversation on, which is to do with the COVID-19 and the factory farms that are being shut down because there's so many cases of the virus being diagnosed and then people dying. What do you think is going to be the outcome of all that awareness around the factory farms being shut down and the wet markets?
Oh man, I really want to be hopeful, because enough information is out now about how like most of the pandemics we've experienced are animal based and could have been avoided were we not farming animals, especially on such a mass scale. But at the same time, you have things like Plandemic coming out that are saying like it's all just a big hoax and has nothing to do with animals and blah blah blah. So a lot of people are latching onto that. So I like, at one point I want to be hopeful, but I'm also kind of nervous that it's just going to go right back to business as usual, even though business as usual was a disaster. So.
Well, and that's the reality. I mean, you look at our healthcare system, it collapsing. You look at our financial system collapsing. You look at the health of people collapsing. And with the obesity rate rising every day, and people looking for something outside of themselves to blame for why things are the way they are. And it's interesting because I was just writing a broadcast email that I'm going to send out where I've been announcing to my community. I've had my business 26 years. I'm a business strategist, and I'm actually making a major transition into only working within the plant-based, vegan, and wellness industries. And I've been announcing that to my list, and it's such perfect time because with what's happened with COVID, a lot of businesses are being put through the ringer. And we can either fight to hold on to what was, or we can say, okay, this is the way it is. What do I do with what is? Where do you see your business going in the future? And how do you see yourself being a voice for veganism and animals moving forward?
The demographic here especially is not large enough for me to survive if I were to say, I'll only train vegans, or I'll only train you if you go vegan. And that's just not the right approach anyway. So I'll just continue sharing little bits and pieces here. You know, if people are saying if they have like acne or inflammation, I'll say, you know, the first thing you can really do is cut out dairy, because that's going to reduce all of that in a major way. And just, you know, little bits and pieces here and there, and just keep letting my work show, and I'll probably try to kind of showcase and highlight the successes of my clients, especially those that do follow that more of a plant-based lifestyle, and just be like,
Right. Well, and I have a global reach for my market, so it's not like I'm constrained to one small geographic region, because you're right. It's like we have to look at what is going to be the greatest benefit to our business, to our clients, things of that nature. But somebody did recommend, I saw in one post, you were, I think it was a goat. You were in some tan overalls and you were petting a goat or kissing a goat or something, and somebody said you should do a calendar. So maybe we need to get you on a calendar and sell your calendars. You could go global that way. That might be the thing to do.
named Strawberry, and he's like one of my best friends.
Oh, he's so sweet. He said, I love those pictures of you just being, you're so masculine in so many ways, and that you have this tender side that I think it puts a new face on masculinity, which is so awesome. But if you could wave a magic wand and change things to really raise the awareness around veganism and advocacy, what would you hope that people would start doing, and what would you hope that the government would start doing in the healthcare system? I know that's a pretty big question, but I'm sure you've given it some thought.
Definitely, yeah. The first thing I would do is take away subsidization or subsidies for animal agriculture.
Nice.
I just saw this stat, I think it was yesterday, and it was like $15 billion of subsidies for animal ag, and then it was like, I don't know, like 50 million for like all plant-based foods. It was just an unreasonable difference there. And so if we could take away lobbying and like subsidies like that, then that would, I think, change like the education system in schools, and they would stop saying that the only way you can get protein is meat, and the only way you can get calcium is milk, and all that utter BS. I think that would change everything as soon as you like start at the education level and like take government out of nutrition, like nutrition science, just the same way Canada did. And now their food guide is like 99% plant-based. That would be my magic wand for sure.
Well, what's exciting is I see a lot of people that are grabbing onto something, one part of this whole movement. Brian Rogers, who's in the Facebook group, he dropped 140 pounds and he started a barbecue sauce company, and they've already sold over $1 million worth in the downturn economy. And his whole thing is all the money that comes in for the barbecue sauce and spread and rub or whatever they do with barbecue. He's a pit master. So long before he went plant-based, he was very much into barbecue, and that was one thing he didn't want to give up. But he decided that all the profits from that company are going into school programs to help children eat healthier. And it's like we all do what we can in our own way, but I think that it does have to start within the school systems. It has to start within the healthcare system. It has to start in the government with the subsidies. You're so right, because many people don't realize how much cover-up is going on, how much money is being put into keeping us unhealthy, because if we're not unhealthy, the healthcare system would have to restructure completely. I mean, it's such a big issue, but first of all, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast, because I have so much respect for what you're doing. I think you're just an incredible athlete and want to help you get your message out. Speaking of which, how do people get in touch with you if they're interested in maybe having a over-the-phone consultation about getting in shape? Would you be willing to do that with them? And if so, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess really the easiest way is through Facebook right now. You can either look up my business is Bold Body Fitness LLC, or just my personal one, Zack Belknap. I also have Instagram. Also, that's just Bold Body Fitness LLC. So.
Okay, and we'll put that all in the show notes. So in closing, what would you like to leave people with?
I guess my biggest thing is that all of us are innately animal lovers. We all have that, like, within us. And it's just like if you love a dog, you can also love a cow and a pig. Like, it's all the same thing. And you're not going to sacrifice anything by going plant-based. You're going to like learn a lot more about food. You're going to feel a lot better. And I mean, it just like feels good too to like know that you're reducing your amount, like your negative impact in the world, I guess.
Wonderful. Well, Zack, it's been great having you here. I've been speaking with Zack Belknap, and you can find him on Facebook. We'll put all the contact information in the show notes, on the YouTube notes. And Zack, thank you so much. Keep doing what you're doing. You're a great voice for veganism and the animals.
Thank you. It's been fun.